Why we provide different internet solutions for your different needs. SLT Fiber, 4G and ADSL. SLT Broadband, just the way you want it.
Tonight, controversy strikes. A former senior DIG speaks out about the ill-fated Millennium City probe. No change. Sri Lanka stagnates at 89 in the Corruption Perception Index for 2018.
What is clear is that Sri Lanka falls between what would be classified as a flawed democracy and a hybrid regime.
Gaining grounds. Governor of the central bank warns that without diversifying exports and increasing state revenue, Sri Lanka will remain bogged down.
So that's why we are now in the mess we are in today.
And a message of hope. The inspirational story of the Sri Lankan quadriplegic doctor in Queensland.
What's really important to remember, I think, is that every single person is different, whether they have a disability or not, whether they have an illness or not.
Tonight, Tuesday, the 29th of January 2019.
Smart Android තාක්ෂණයෙන් එන Singer Vista TV එකක් මිලදී ගන්නා ඔබට හිත පිරෙන්න වාසි රැසක් ඕනෑම Singer ප්‍රදර්ශනාගාරයකින්.
From Ada Derana, this is Ada Derana First at 9 with Ndivari Amuwata and Mahesh Jani. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
A very good evening and a warm welcome. Of course, we have a number of stories to report to you other than your headline-making stories. Good evening, Mahesh.
Good evening, Indivri. Indeed, we have lots of stories with regard to our business segment, and also internationally, we are going to look at how the Brexit is once again back in the headlines. So how exactly will that play out?
Right, and also a tense situation erupted between the Navy and residents in Kenya, and several other newsworthy top stories are being reported on First at 9 tonight. But we take a look at your top story to begin with.
Well, President Maithripala Sirisena today extended gratitude to artists who dedicated their lives to the crafts over the years at the Kala Bhushana State Awards in Colombo. Now, Indivri, what caught everyone's attention during President's keynote address was the head of state's praise towards the Deputy Leader of the United National Party, Minister Sajith Premadasa.
Well, it's no secret that before the recent political impasse, the President had offered the position of the country's premiership to the minister. The President's praise of Minister Sajith Premadasa was such that he even said that the minister is overworked.
The Kala Bhushana State Award 2018 was held in Colombo under the patronage of President Maithripala Sirisena today.
We must convey our utmost gratitude and respect to all those artists in different eras for their services to the nation. All of you know that Minister Sajith Premadasa, who oversees the Ministry of Cultural Affairs, didn't attend this event because of ill health. The portfolio of Cultural Affairs was given to the most suitable person in the government, who is one of the most talented, honest and hard-working ministers. Sometimes he doesn't even attend cabinet meetings as he is out of Colombo to check on various projects and return to Colombo around midnight. I am sure he is sick because he is overworked. I'm very happy that such a dedicated and humble minister is overseeing this ministry.
Later, the new tea factory of Maxim's Holdings set up in Mulleria, Bambatale, was declared open by the head of state. The 2 billion rupee project was approved by Sri Lanka Board of Investment and will now produce high-quality tea primarily for export. It will also provide packaging facilities to small and medium sector tea plantations. Following the President's visit, Opposition Leader Mahinda Rajapaksa also engaged in an observational tour of the factory.
Well, Sri Lanka is ranked 89th in the Corruption Perception Index 2018 among 180 countries. The index uses a scale of 0 to 100, where 0 is highly corrupt and 100 is very clean, and Sri Lanka scored 38.
Indeed, now highlighting that Sri Lanka has not made any advances on its last year's position in the index, Transparency International Sri Lanka laments the country's lack of progress on corruption eradication. Speaking at a media briefing today, Executive Director of TISL, Ashoka Obesekere, put the country between a flawed democracy and a hybrid regime based on its position in the index.
Well, Obesekere also highlighted that it is essential that all authorities uphold their impartiality and independence with a likely conclusion of several high-profile corruption cases this year.
The index carried out by TISL, which ranks countries and territories by their perceived level of public sector corruption, according to experts and business people, say that the continued failure of most countries to significantly control corruption is contributing to a crisis in democracy around the world.
What is clear is that Sri Lanka falls between what would be classified as a flawed democracy and a hybrid regime, which has authoritarian tendencies. Looking over the past few years, it is clear that there has been an implementation gap between the laws in the books and laws in the way in which they are implemented. Similarly, we would say that in Sri Lanka, given our particular circumstances, ensuring that there is timely justice is key. So the fact that something is moving along slowly does not necessarily allow for anti-corruption to be adequately tackled. And it is essential that the authorities ensure their impartiality and independence in dealing with these matters. And given the elections that may be around the corner, it is essential that impartiality is really driven home by the authorities that are having to drive this, to ensure that election-related interests do not attach to the anti-corruption cases over the coming year. Over the last 5 to 6 years, we can see that our scores have ranged between 36 and 38, which illustrates that there has been very little progress despite having a government that has come in with an anti-corruption mandate.
Sri Lanka is ranked 89th in the world and 3rd in South Asia behind Bhutan and India on a scale of 0, which is highly corrupt, to 100, meaning very clean. The research carried out by Transparency International highlights that while there are exceptions, the data shows that despite some progress, most countries are failing to make serious inroads against corruption.
Opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa is of the view that the chairman of the Election Commission offering his resignation would do little in expediting already delayed elections. Speaking to media following an event held in Colombo today, the opposition leader stressed that the chairman of the Election Commission should make a declaration as to which poll would come first.
The responsibility of the Election Commission is to hold elections. The issue can't be resolved by his resignation. He should work according to the law of the country. Until the new law is imposed, the old law should be followed. Therefore, elections should be held under the old system.
A former Assistant Superintendent of Police, Kulasiri Udugampala, was accused of revealing confidential information relating to intelligence personnel of the Sri Lanka Army when the police raided an army safe house at the Millennium City Housing Scheme in Aturugiriya on the 2nd of January in 2002. The case drew much attention, with this incident being identified by some quarters as a massive betrayal of the country. Now, following the leak, the relevant intelligence officers were assassinated by the terror group, the LTTE. In such a backdrop, former Senior Deputy Inspector General of Police, HMGB Kotagadeniya, made a controversial statement to media today.
It was the 2nd of January in 2002. There were media reports that the police raided a safe house of the army and arrested intelligence officers along with a cache of weapons. I was asked to meet the then Minister of Internal Affairs, John Amarathunga, at the Ministry of Defence, and he told me that the arrest was conducted by an Assistant Superintendent of Police heading the Candice Kennel Unit, and the Minister wanted me to conduct a separate independent investigation on the matter. I agreed to the request and informed Udugampala to work according to my instructions. But since he conducted investigations arbitrarily, I sent 2 reports to the Minister of Internal Affairs and then to the Inspector General of Police. Neither the politicians nor the responsible officers took satisfactory measures against him. Names of the arrested intelligence officers were revealed through the investigations carried out by Udugampala. What finally happened because of this revelation was more than 30 intelligence officers were murdered by the LTTE.
LTTE ඝාතනයට පත් වුණා.
දැන් ඒ වෙලාවේ සේනාධිපති නායිකාව විදිහට චන්ද්‍රිකා කුමාරතුංග මහත්මිය කටයුතු කළේ.
මන් දන්න විදිහට එතුමියත්
As far as I know, she didn't adopt a tough stance on the LTTE. She didn't approve some of the suggestions I made on terrorists when I was the Deputy Inspector General in charge of Colombo. She even ordered my removal from the position.
ඇය අනුමත කෙරේ නැහැ. ඒකල ඇය කෙලින්ම නියෝගයක් දුන්නා මම මෙතනින් අයින් කරන්න කියලා.
Well, hundreds of thousands of Sri Lankans migrate for employment each year, placing the number of our foreign expatriates at 2 million. That figure amounts to 10% of the country's population.
Now, since 2015, the number of Sri Lankans who registered themselves with the Sri Lankan Bureau of Foreign Employment and proceeded to migrate have seen a drastic drop. This downturn of registration of migrants with the Bureau has made it difficult to keep track of accurate numbers as well as to guarantee the safety.
Well, Sri Lanka Foreign Employment Bureau launched the national media campaign on safe labour migration yesterday, along with the hotline 1989 for the benefit of our migrant workers.
The national media campaign on safe labour migration was launched yesterday by the Sri Lanka Foreign Employment Bureau under the patronage of Minister of Foreign Employment Hari Fernando and the Ambassador of Switzerland to Sri Lanka, Hans-Peter Mock. Hotline 1989 was also introduced for the benefit of migrants.
This is a need of the hour, I would say. I'm not very worried about the numbers of migrating or labour migration, but how they travel on these migrations. Quite a lot of controversial stories that we've been hearing from the past. If you did follow certain trends, in Saudi, currently there are about 49 people who have been stuck, stranded. I think it's about a communication, an effective communication to all our citizens to let them know which route to take. They have to fight for their cases, for their exit visas, plus they have to make sure their salaries are being paid. Lots of people who live abroad, and they do need the guidance of what are their rights and how they should be able to exit if they do want to exit. Unfortunately, if they are not registered and does not go through the Foreign Employment Bureau too, we do have a significant issue of bringing them back. We do not have the rights to go and talk on behalf of them. In the 13 countries that we are representing right now, on our main countries of migration, we have our Foreign Employment Bureau officers.
Labour migration has developed to a very important topic in world politics. In 2017, the world counted no less than 258 million international migrants. This accounts for 3.4% of the global population of the world. What is less known is that only 10% of these migrants are refugees or asylum seekers. This means that the vast majority of the people migrate for better employment, education, or other opportunities for the betterment of their lives and the lives of their families. However, migration not only benefits the individual person and his family, migration also greatly benefits both the countries people are coming from as well as the country they are going to.
In other stories we have for you tonight, members of the team Derana called on the Chief Prelate of the Malwatha chapter, Most Venerable Thibbatuwawe Sri Sumangala Thera, last evening. The team also called on the chief incumbent of the Riddhi Vihara in Kurunegala, where discussions centered on the humanitarian initiatives planned to launch a project to plant tree saplings.
The Derana team called on Chief Prelate of the Malwatha chapter, Most Venerable Thibbatuwawe Sri Sumangala Thera, in Kandy last evening, where they briefed the Most Venerable Thera on past and future projects conducted by Derana's humanitarian arm. During the meeting, the Chief Prelate commended the humanitarian work carried out by Derana and bestowed his blessings for the success of future activities. Following the meeting, the team visited the Riddhi Vihara in Kurunegala yesterday. A meeting to arouse awareness on a sapling planting campaign to be conducted from Mallavapitiya to Ridigam in Kurunagala was held under the auspices of Chief Incumbent Venerable Tibbatuave Shri Siddhartha Buddharakkhita Thera, along with participation of state officials. The chosen route for the project is a 17-kilometer stretch, and the campaign will get underway on the 15th of March this year.
Well, we want to bring you an inspirational story of an individual who has dedicated his life to help patients with spinal injuries while dealing with his own.
Well, young Sri Lankan doctor Dinesh Palipana, whose life took an unexpected turn following an accident, defied all odds to graduate medical school despite his physical disability.
Now, he serves as the first quadriplegic doctor to work in Queensland, Australia.
And Dr. Dinesh Palipana is also motivating individuals who have suffered similar trauma like himself to not give up on their dreams.
What's really important to remember, I think, is that every single person is different, whether they have a disability or not, whether they have an illness or not, whatever gender they are. I think every person's really unique.
Dr. Dinesh Palipana speaks about differences within people, but in a good way. He doesn't believe disabilities make people different, but people are in fact inherently different from each other. What doesn't meet the eye, however, is that Dr. Palipana himself is someone who overcame what most consider a debilitating disability to win an Order of Australia medal. A lecturer at the Griffiths Medical School, the courageous young Sri Lankan was felicitated in the Australia Day Honours of 2019 for his contribution to medicine. Dr. Palipana, who was also the Junior Doctor of the Year at the Gold Coast University Hospital, has his roots in Sri Lanka. Born in Kandy and having moved to Australia in 1994, Dinesh was a student whose career choice was the medical profession. In a bizarre turn of events, his car aquaplaned on Brisbane's Gateway motorway halfway through his stint at the medical school. The gravity of what happened dawned on him when he knew that his spinal cord had taken a hit and suffered quadriplegia, a state of paralysis. Like any other major accident survivor, Dinesh had a challenging recovery period, which in his case was 7 months.
This time really gave me a perspective on what it's like to be a patient, feeling disempowered and losing control of my choices and life. And I think that was really important in shaping my interactions with my patients today.
Having overcome all the trials and tribulations, Dinesh graduated from Griffith School of Medicine. But a job was not forthcoming as he expected. Due to a delay in the administrative process, Dinesh could not start work along with his colleagues and had to wait for 6 more months. That's when Gold Coast University Hospital called to offer him a position. Today, his duties are not limited to the treatment room. He inspires, he motivates, and breathes hope into those who need it the most.
Just to have someone think about setting me aside because of my physical attributes and to exclude me from pursuing what I really love, my passion. That was a really deeply personal thing, and I wasn't so much as offended as hurt to say, you know, if you have this, then you can't study medicine, or if you have that, you can't do this. I think that's a really rigid and not a sensible approach. After I digested that emotional aspect of it, I just realized that's not really acceptable, and we need to create opportunities for people rather than create barriers.
Well, defying all odds, truly this is bravery. We take a short commercial break. We'll be back with your business news.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel. This is Other Derana 24.
Well, Sri Lanka and debt are almost becoming synonymous, especially with international media, along with local politicians continuing to harp on the topic. Sri Lanka is expected to pay about $5.9 billion of foreign debt this year. the talk seems justified. The central bank governor, however, is unperpetuated by the task ahead, saying that there are plans to pay it off, but admitted that Sri Lanka was essentially buying time until the country was able to earn sufficient funds to start settling that debt obligation.
Now, but that cannot be done without increasing our receipts. That was the central bank chief pointing it out. He added that even to buy time for debt repayment, foreigners must have enough confidence in the Sri Lankan economy in order to lend money.
And Sri Lanka is classified as a twin deficit country, Mahesh. This is a category of countries which are the most vulnerable in the global economy. Admitting that these are not the best of times for the economy, the governor insisted that the revenue generation and increasing export earnings are the fundamental requirements to take the country out of this mess.
As a twin deficit country, the central bank governor pointed out the unsustainable budget deficit and the unsustainable deficit in the current account of the balance of payments that should be urgently addressed. According to the governor, from the 1970s to 2000s, Sri Lanka has been collecting 19 to 20% of GDP as revenue, but it slipped to 11.5% in 2014 and now stand at around 13.8%. In this context, what would be the ideal scenario for Sri Lanka's balance of payment situation?
Total expenditure is about 20% of GDP. Now, if you compare that with our comparator countries, that is an acceptable level of expenditure. Now, one can debate whether the quality of expenditure is good as it should be, but the overall level is okay. If we want to have 20% of GDP expenditure, we have to take into account the fact that the overall budget deficit that we can afford to run without having an unsustainable debt problem is about 3 to 3.5% of GDP. Combination of domestic and foreign borrowings, but at a level which doesn't get us into a very onerous and unsustainable debt situation. So if you have expenditure of 20% of GDP and a budget deficit of 3 or 3.5% of GDP, we have to get revenue up to about 16.5% of GDP. So that is really the target. And that's where the Customs Department comes in, because clearly you are one of the 3 major revenue earning departments.
The governor went on to explain how Sri Lanka ran into the second of the twin deficits, that is the current account of the balance of payments. In 2000, Sri Lanka's exports as a percentage of GDP was 33.3%, but fell to 12.6% of GDP by 2015. Just as the island nation allowed exports to come down, what has happened to the debt structure? By 2004, only 3.9% of Sri Lanka's total debt was non-concessional. It eventually went up to 7.3% in 2005, and today commercial debt alone stands at 54.8% of GDP.
Now, there's nothing wrong with borrowing, but you have to use that money productively. It has to go in to projects and expenditures which yield a high enough rate of return to pay back the debt. And if you're borrowing abroad, that money must be used to earn or save foreign exchange. Instead, we put the money often into low-yielding or very minimal yielding projects, and also non-tradables, that is, projects which didn't earn or save foreign exchange. So that's why we are now in the mess we are in today. On the budget deficit, Customs as a major revenue earning institution has a key role to play in helping us get out of that problem. And when it comes to the current account deficit, the only way we can get out of it is through export transformation.
At the Colombo Stock Exchange, the all-share price index ended 0.4% firmer at 5,997.46, with a turnover of 841.9 million rupees, which is more than last year's daily average of 834 million rupees. Foreign investors, in the meantime, sold a net 382.1 million rupees worth of shares, and there have been net sellers of 2.3 billion rupees worth of stocks during the year so far. And for more details, we have Achyutan Srirangan from First Capital Holdings.
Bros ended in a green, reverting back to the positive sentiment on gain made by John Keels and HNB, while turnover recorded nearly 2 weeks high, with a 47% of trade being derived from crossing made by central finance. A net foreign outflow witnessed amidst low foreign participation. The bond market, the secondary market yield curve witnessed a parallel downward shift amidst the foreign buying interest mainly centered on 23 maturities. Meanwhile, today CBSL announced the issuance of 50 billion worth of bond at a bond auction to be held on 31st January 2019.
Let's get you the currency rate for today. The Sri Lankan rupee closed firmer on banks' dollar sales from inward remittances and on behalf of foreign investors who are purchasing short-term bills. The rupee ended at 183 rupees and 41 cents against the US dollar today, and it has appreciated 1 rupee and 5 cents. 1.05% so far this year. Now with that, let's now take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other major currencies around the world.
The Food and Agriculture Organization says the country is about 15 to 20% self-sufficient with its milk products, though that level has been achieved mostly with imported milk powder. However, reports have come to light that a considerable number of containers have not been cleared from ports as milk powder importers continue to exert pressure on the government to increase prices of milk powder.
Other Derana received reports of a large number of containers accumulating at ports, with companies importing milk powder failing to clear their stocks. Furthermore, it is said that the relevant companies have failed to submit the required documentation for customs tax. This comes in a backdrop where milk powder importers have requested an increment to the concession given on direct taxes on milk powder imports. They also suggest that the Consumer Affairs Authority increase the control price in the market as an alternative. Recently, Minister of Industry and Commerce Rishad Badiuddin was questioned on what measures will be taken to address the issue.
Importers made this request. The chairman of the Cost of Living Committee is Malik Samaravikrama. The parties will hold discussions and take a decision. I would not like it if the prices increase. But because they requested it, we must also be fair to them. Therefore, we are holding discussions.
It is, however, reported that the Cost of Living Committee, chaired by Minister Malik Samaravikrama, who was to meet relevant stakeholders today following the cabinet meeting and discuss a solution, failed to do so.
Well, two individuals who were engaged in illegal sand mining at the Mahaveli River Basin in the Kandalkadu area in Kenya attempted to escape from the police arrest only to disappear into the Mahaveli River. A body of one person who jumped into the Mahaveli River was recovered at Kenya area in Trincomalee this evening. A tense situation ensued when the police were conducting a search operation to look for the two individuals. Meanwhile, the Navy also said that 12 officers and 4 others suffered severe injuries and were admitted to the Trincomalee General Hospital. The Police Special Task Force, with the assistance of the Sri Lankan Navy, had conducted a number of raids on illegal sand mining in the Mahaveli River Basin in Trincomalee during the last few days. Accordingly, police also arrested a number of illegal sand miners and introduced them before the court. Sri Lankan Navy also conducted another raid this morning at the Mahaveli River Basin at the Kandalkadu area in Kenya to arrest several suspects who were illegally mining sand. During the raid, 2 persons who saw the advancing Navy personnel attempted to escape arrest by jumping into the river, following which they disappeared. The account is collaborated by the Navy and the police. After these events unfolded, a tense situation arose as the villagers remonstrated against the Navy. Navy spokesperson Lieutenant Commander Isru Suribandara said that the Navy had to fire shots into the air in an attempt to control the situation. The Navy's attempts to bring the situation under control proved futile, and the intervention of the police and the STF was required. Villagers, however, claim that the 2 persons who disappeared didn't jump into the river, but they fell into the river during the incident. The body of one suspect was recovered from the area of Kenya, and a search operation is currently underway.
While we take a short break, we'll be back with your top news from overseas.
are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel. This is Other Derana 24.
Well, in news overseas, we begin with a developing story from Venezuela. The country's opposition leader has said today that people are living in a dictatorship and renewed his calls for a fresh election. Juan Guaido declared himself interim leader last week and has been recognized by more than 20 countries, including the United States. President Nicolas Maduro retains the support of the Russian Federation, which has accused the U.S. of illegal interference. At least 40 people are believed to have died in the recent unrest. This is according to the United Nations. And protests have been growing since Maduro began a second term as president this month. He was elected last year during a controversial vote in which many opposition candidates were barred from running or they were jailed.
Let's take you to the United Kingdom now. Parliamentarians are preparing to vote on amendments to Theresa May's Brexit deal that could shape the next stage of negotiations with the EU. Conservative MPs have been told to back a proposal for an alternative to the Irish backstop, which is seen as the insurance policy against the return of a visible border. But it is not yet known which amendments will be chosen for a vote. Separately, Conservative MPs on both sides of the Brexit argument have been planning for a no-deal scenario. The EU's Deputy Chief Negotiator Sabine Weyand said that there is a huge risk of the UK crashing out of the EU without a deal by accident. But a British newspaper has reported May's will to do otherwise.
The British Parliament is due to vote on the alternative plan for a Brexit deal today. The country's Prime Minister Theresa May submitted the plan to the House of Commons on the 21st of January after her initial deal was overwhelmingly rejected in Parliament. At present, there are still disagreements between the parties in the UK and also between the UK and the EU. Britain's newspaper The Sun said on Sunday that May has privately told her cabinet that she will not allow the UK to leave the EU without a deal, but it is not time to declare to the public that a no-deal Brexit can be ruled out. According to May, the UK could lose key bargaining chips in negotiations with the EU if it announced to the public that there will not be a no-deal Brexit. Matt Hancock, Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, said on Sunday that the UK could impose martial law if a no-deal Brexit leads to social chaos, but that it is not the government's priority at the moment. Britain is scheduled to leave the EU on the 29th of March.
And in sports here at home, Minister of Sports Harin Fernando has issued a directive to the Cricket Selection Committee that selections to the national team will be made in line with the collective decision of the captain, the manager as well as the selectors. The coach of the national team was recently accused of arbitrarily picking players to the national cricket team. The sports minister's new directive gives powers to the majority consensus of the new management. The selection committee is headed by Asantha Dimel, with Brendan Kuruppu, Hemantha Vikramaratne and Chaminda Mendes being its other members.
Former world #1 Andy Murray has undergone a hip resurfacing surgery in London. 3 times Grand Slam winner Murray has struggled to regain form since undergoing a hip operation last January and was knocked out in the first round of the Australian Open, having said that the tournament could be his last as a professional. In a social media post on Monday, Murray wrote, "I now have a metal hip."
Well, that's all the news from us here tonight. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to log on to www.otherderana.lk for all those stories that you missed tonight. I'm Derana.
And I'm Mahesh Johnny. Thank you for making us a part of your evening. Have a very good night.